The following program is based on a true story. Some of the names have been changed. This program contains reenactments.
I'm former FBI agent Joe Pistone, the real Donnie Brasco. The Mafia put a contract on my head, but I've got stories to tell. This is the story of Terry Hake, a lawyer trying to clean up corruption in Chicago's courts. Some of Terry's own friends are selling justice, and he aims to stop it. To do it, the FBI asked him to go deep undercover.
Chicago, a tough town, proud of its blue-collar roots and can-do attitude, with a dark side. Everyone knows that corruption and backroom deals get things done in the Windy City. Enter Terry Hake, recent law school graduate, who gets a new kind of education as a prosecutor for the state attorney's office.
I practiced law in front of judges who were rumored to be on the take. I didn't see anything happening, money changing hands, that kind of thing. But I felt I was losing trials for reasons not based on the evidence presented in court.
The first major signal is when Harry Ailman, a well-known hitman for the mob, walks free. Terry and other honest prosecutors are stunned.
Judge Frank Wilson found Harry Ailman not guilty of murdering a union official, in spite of the fact that there were 2 eyewitnesses.
At first, Terry Hake lowers his head and tries to get his job done. But the criminals keep going free.
One case that particularly disturbed me was the owner of a grocery store had raped one of his employees, a young woman, and then when she threatened to report it to the police, he chased her out of the store with a gun in his hand.
Terry begins to complain about what he sees as corruption in the murder, rape, and child courts. But no one seems to do anything about it until one day in 1981.
I received a phone call from the First Assistant State's Attorney asking me if I would meet with the federal government about Operation Greylord. They asked me if I would work undercover for them, taking bribes from defense attorneys. And I said, yes, I would do it.
Well, I definitely thought that his legal career was over. I thought that he was probably either crazy or the bravest person that I had ever met.
Taking the job will become the most consequential decision of Terry's life. But there are very few people he can tell about it.
After going to law school for 3 solid years and possibly throwing my law career away, I said I had to at least discuss it with my mother. And they did give me permission to tell my mother about it.
But Terry decides to mention his opportunity with the FBI to one more person, Mark Ciavelli.
He was my best friend from the prosecutor's office.
To Terry's surprise, Ciavelli reacts with suspicion, so Terry immediately says he didn't agree to do it. Terry realizes that he can't let anyone know what he's doing. They'd call him a rat, the mission would unravel, and his career would be over.
A lot of people could not have done what Terry did. He had to work against personal friends of his.
The feds give Terry a list of targets and tell him to get to work.
One of our first targets was the judge whose courtroom I was assigned to, Judge Wayne Olson. And Wayne was rumored to be one of the most corrupt judges in the system.
The number 2 target is defense attorney Robert Silvery Bob Silverman, who frequently appears in front of Judge Olson and is rumored to have strong ties to the mob.
Bob was rumored to be the most corrupt defense attorney in the system. It was said that Bob never took on a case unless he felt he could fix it.
Terry asks the FBI how many other undercover lawyers they have in the Chicago system. None, they say. Nada. He's alone in this.
The main reason for undercover operations is to put somebody on the inside in those situations where trying to attack the problem from the outside is not going to be successful.
Welcome to Operation Greylord.
The supervisor of the Public Corruption Squad suggested to the agent who was running Greylord that he look at the daily racing form for ideas as to how to name the case. So the case agent looked at the racing form and saw a horse named Greylord.
But against an entrenched system of corruption that no one talks about, Greylord faces long odds of success. Terry has to get them to talk.
One thing I did was get friendly with some of the regular lawyers who tried cases in front of Judge Olson. And one of them was a former Chicago police officer named Jim Costello.
Jim Big Bird Costello is notorious as one of the hallway hustlers, lawyers who pick up clients by strolling the hallowed halls of justice.
Jim and I went out to many lunches together, had drinks together after court, and he slowly took me into his confidence.
Costello explains to Terry how practicing law works in the real world.
Well, the system operates generally through a series of bagmen who work for judges and take the payments from the corrupt attorneys and pass them on to a judge. And so oftentimes the corrupt attorneys may not even deal with the judge directly, depending on the relationship.
One night, Costello takes Terry to a local watering hole favored by judges and defense attorneys who are in on the game. After slamming back a few shots, he lets Terry in on a secret.
Jim had been telling me for months how corrupt the system was and how he was paying bribes to Judge Olson, how he had accepted bribes as a police officer, as an assistant state's attorney when he was a prosecutor. And I felt that he wanted to give me something.
Right then, Costello becomes a target of the operation. But the FBI wants to take on the entire system, not one bad seed. As soon as Terry sees a chance to push things further, he takes it.
This lawyer who was assigned to the courthouse by the Bar Association kept pestering me all day with questions, and I was getting tired of it. I said out loud in front of Jim, after the lawyer had left, I'm sick and tired of him asking me questions. What is he doing for me?
Costello takes the bait and hands Terry some cash, suggesting it's a payment for future favors. It's Terry's first bribe, but he's less than happy about it.
I had grown to like him, and I kept thinking, gosh, I wish he hadn't done that, given me the $100. I really like this guy.
It's not the last time Terry will encounter a friend acting illegally.
I never thought my best friend would be dirty.
When a blatant case of fixing sets a mafia hitman free to kill again, the FBI goes after Chicago's corrupt legal system. The point of their spear is Terry Hake, a young lawyer who goes deep undercover. Terry's digging up dirt, but the feds want hard evidence, and that means wearing a wire.
When I put the wire on for the first time to record Jim Costello, I was extremely nervous. It was rather bulky. It was about the size of a paperback book, and I wore it under my arm, but I was always nervous while wearing it.
Anytime you're wearing a wire, there's a chance that somebody is going to discover that you're doing that, and that puts your life in jeopardy.
Terry learns how the Chicago legal system works in the real world from Jim Big Bird Costello.
I'm not sure that the police officers, judges, bailiffs, court personnel really took the time to rationalize what they were doing. They found themselves in a system that this is the way that it operated. It operated corruptly. And then they just went along.
But Terry is still on the sidelines. He needs to get dirty, or the operation will fail. Then his good pal Big Bird Costello gives him the break he needs.
He asked me to release a car that had been inventoried as evidence because narcotics had been seized in it. He said if I released the car, he would give me $50 for doing it. So I ordered a release of the vehicle from the police impoundment lot for $50.
It's a sign that Costello can trust Terry, and that opens up doors.
After Jim Costello started paying me off to fix his narcotics cases, he then suggested to me that he knew another lawyer who would be willing to pay me off to dismiss narcotics cases. So he went to that lawyer and made an introduction for that lawyer to begin paying me off.
Terry is finally in the club. He continues passing bribes, getting cases dismissed, and playing the role of dirty lawyer to the hilt. After months of working undercover, Terry gets a call from his old friend, Mark Ciavelli.
He had recently left the prosecutor's office and become a criminal defense attorney. He invited me out to lunch.
The friendly catching up takes a turn that shakes Terry to the core.
Over lunch, he told me that he had recently bribed a judge in another courthouse. He had fixed that case and intended to bribe a second judge, and I was devastated by this.
Assuming Terry is dirty, Ciavelli makes a mistake.
He suggested that I take a bribe to fix this case. I was now offended that he was trying to bribe me. For all he knew, I was a real prosecutor in Cook County. And here he was trying to bribe me and make me a criminal, my good friend. What kind of friend was that?
Old friend or not, Terry knows what he has to do.
I met with my FBI contacts the next day, and the FBI encouraged me to go after him. He was my best friend from the prosecutor's office.
One crooked judge whose name keeps coming up is Wayne Olson.
Judge Olson felt he was untouchable. He felt he was above the law because he was the law. He figured that this has been going on for so long that no one could get to him.
The FBI decides to bug Judge Olson's chambers, which will require some cloak and dagger work.
Putting a bug in a judge's chambers had never been tried before.
A black bag team will plant the bug, and Terry is the lookout. The judge leaves the courthouse, and a surveillance team keeps an eye on him. Terry remains on high alert, watching for any interference. But the team gets the bug planted just in time.
It was the first time ever in the United States that the judge's chambers were bugged.
Terry is on a roll. He's got the wiretap on Judge Olson, and he finally makes real progress with his other primary target, Silvery Bob Silverman. But it's not all good news.
By associating with Bob Silverman, Jim Costello, and other lawyers who were suspected of paying bribes, my reputation amongst my fellow assistant state's attorneys took a nosedive.
It was always, I think, believed by everybody in the project that he was never going to be able to practice law in Cook County again.
But Terry's got his hooks into some big fish, and there's one bottom feeder he really wants to nail. A man named Lucius Robinson.
Lucius Robinson was the bailiff in the murder, rape, child molestation courtroom where those cases were being fixed.
Including the case that pushed Terry over the edge, the rape and beating of a teenage girl. A case Robinson fixed so the rapist walked.
These were the most serious cases in our criminal justice system, and these guys thought nothing of taking money on those cases.
Terry dangles a bribe. Robinson takes the bait and the money. Terry has him.
How dare you think of fixing cases? How dare you do that to these poor victims and to the people in our county?
But Terry's triumph is short-lived. He gets a chilling call from the FBI. The bug in Olson's office picked up someone asking about Terry and the FBI.
When I heard that, I thought for sure they knew I was working for the FBI.
Terry Hake is deep undercover for the FBI in Operation Greylord. He's worked his way into a position of trust with the fixers, bagmen, and crooked judges. But now, just as he's making real progress, he's suddenly in danger of having his cover blown.
Through the years, there was talk about what they might do to someone who gave them up.
There was always a concern about Terry's safety.
To allay suspicion, Terry fixes a case for Silvery Bob.
It was a tribute to Terry that he was able to convince people that he was something that he was not, and to have them take him into their confidence.
The operation is piling up evidence, but the FBI wants to go for the knockout.
They decided that I would be of more use as a criminal defense attorney. That way I could roam throughout Cook County and bribe judges.
After he had made that transformation, he was actually referred to by some as Terry Take.
To get in front of the judges, Terry needs to represent real defendants. So the FBI decides to create their own.
We would have agents pose as shoplifters, pose as narcotics dealers, auto thieves, gun possessors, and have these undercover FBI agents arrested for these offenses so I could fix those cases in the corrupt court system.
The operation is hitting on all cylinders when one of the fake crimes suddenly goes sideways.
We had a contrived case set up which was to involve one of our undercover agents stealing a purse from another one of our undercover agents on Michigan Avenue in Chicago.
But when the purse snatcher is arrested, the cops find his FBI ID. The story hits the front page of the Chicago papers like a bag of wet cement.
I see in the paper that a person had been arrested in Chicago for purse snatching. And after the arrest, his FBI credentials were found inside of his jacket. So I immediately thought to myself, oh my gosh, this whole thing's over.
Terry calls the FBI office, desperate to find out how it happened.
When the agent who was going to be the perpetrator of the crime came into Chicago, it was a nice warm day, and he took his credentials and put them in his winter coat. The next day, it was a cold day, and so when he went out to conduct a contrived case, he was wearing his winter coat, forgetting that he had put his credentials in that coat.
The feds aren't ready to abandon the operation. One of the supervisors tells Terry they will redirect the screw-up.
We were able to survive it because the Chicago police thought that the whole case was set up to investigate police corruption.
Operation Greylord is back on, but it's causing problems for Terry's upcoming marriage.
My fiance wouldn't let me invite the bad guys to the wedding. I heard about that from Costello, actually. He called me up one day, about 2 weeks before the wedding.
By now, Jim Costello looks at Terry as his best friend.
I had to explain to him that it was a small family wedding and we weren't able to invite a lot of people. And he said he would take care of me with a gift on the back end, but that never happened.
Operation Greylord stretches on for another year, and Terry Hake feels the pressure. If he's found out, it could mean a violent death.
I was undercover for 3 years and 7 months, and at times I thought to myself or asked myself, when is this going to end?
One day, a local TV reporter breaks a story about an undercover operation in the Chicago courts.
There was all sorts of speculation in the room about who might be the mole or moles in this undercover investigation. I worried about violence after the case leaked to the newspapers. I didn't worry about myself so much as I worried about my wife.
Terry is called to meet with his FBI supervisors. They have news for him.
They decided for my safety to swear me in while I was still undercover as an FBI agent. This had never been done before.
Swearing him in as an FBI agent gave him then some further protection, because somebody would have to think then, if I take action against him, now I'm taking action against an FBI agent.
Next, Terry gets a phone call from his old friend Mark Ciavelli.
Mark told me that he had heard this rumor that I was working for the FBI. My heart fell into my stomach, and I figured the case was over. I also feared a bit for my safety.
But Terry denies the rumor, and the operation keeps going. The feds need him to get one of the crooked lawyers to testify to make the charges stick.
They decided the most logical person to approach was Jim Costello. They figured he had the most to lose.
Terry tells Costello that he spoke with a federal prosecutor, and Costello's name came up.
I convinced the FBI that I should be the one to talk Costello into cooperating. He considered me one of his best friends in the whole world, so I invited him out to a hotel in suburban Chicago.
Costello shows up for the meeting. Terry is already there, with FBI backup watching.
I made the approach to him. I told him that I was working for the FBI and that we had a substantial case against him.
Terry asks Costello to testify against the crooked lawyers and judges.
He couldn't see past his hatred, couldn't see the logic of maybe him cooperating.
Soon after, Terry's name is splashed across the front pages of the Chicago papers. His cover is blown.
When my name was in the newspaper for being the cooperating undercover agent, it was exciting to me, but at the same time, I was afraid. I thought we might never make it to court.
He and Kathy hide in a hotel under FBI protection. The FBI quickly make arrests. 92 officials are indicted, including judges, lawyers, police officers, court officials, and even a state legislator.
We indicted Judge Olson. We indicted Jim Costello. Bob Silverman was indicted. We hit all the big names that we initially set out to investigate.
Terry's biggest success is putting Harry Ailman back in court.
His defense attorneys, of course, argued double jeopardy. Harry has already been found not guilty of this 1972 murder. You can't try him again. But the trial judge in the Illinois Appellate Court ruled that because Harry Ailman had paid this $10,000 bribe, that double jeopardy did not attach. So Harry Ailman was convicted of murder in 1997, 25 years after the murder, and he received 300 years in prison.
Operation Greylord affected the lives of many people, especially Terry Hake.
Operation Greylord changed my life greatly. Here I was, a young lawyer, out to do the right thing in the court system, and Greylord allowed me to fight the corruption that I saw in that court system. And I was able to cope because I stayed grounded in knowing that what I was doing was the right thing to do.
Televisa presents